if you are selling your business and someone is giving you an offer, I would be point blank with them of how many deals have you closed? How many deals have you closed at what you offered? Like, just test those waters, because you're going to get a lot of people who have never closed a deal in their life. They've worked in the M&A space, they've worked in finance or investment banking or something like that. They've not done it themselves, and it's a very low percentage conversion in terms of people who try it and actually successfully close it, because they don't have the funding, they don't realize the diligence, they haven't gone through the SBA process, they don't realize everything that it entails, right? So one, like, do you have a track record, right? Which, if you don't, that's fine, but let's make sure that we're all very clear in terms of like where we're at in the education process and expectations and timeline. And this may take a little bit longer to close if this is your first one. And then two, is your offer your offer? Yeah. Like, just as simple as that. So we won't retrade and we won't be retraded on. So it's one of those things of where it's like maybe it's a little old school or like handshake style, but it's like, no, this is the offer. Like, we're not going to spend months of diligence trying to rip out, $10K here and $50K here and $100K here. And no, it's a waste of everybody's time, and it's net value negative.
Welcome to the How to Buy or Sell a Business Successfully podcast. The concepts discussed in this podcast are for informational purposes only. No attorney-client relationship is intended or formed by this podcast. No legal advice is intended in the substance of this podcast. Feel free to check out our website, www.goforemanlaw.com. Enjoy the show and welcome your hosts, Jake Wayman and Sam Foreman. Welcome back to another episode of How to Buy and Sell a Business Successfully. My name is Sam Foreman. I'm the founder of Foreman Law. One of the best things in my life right now is just getting to interact with my kids and seeing all of the different ranges of emotions that they'll go through in 14 seconds. This morning, as I was leaving the house, my 3-year-old was very upset that I was leaving. And he said, "Dad, when you get back, I'm probably going to accidentally give you a spank." We don't spank in our house. That's not a thing that we do. But apparently that's a thing that he does now, is I'm being disciplined by my child. So, and then 2 seconds later, he's like, Dad, can I have a kiss and a silly hug? And it was just the best. So, I'm joined today by my co-host, Jacob Wayman.
Thanks, Sam. Jake Wayman, my wife and I are the operators of the Orange Theory Fitness studios here in Wichita, Kansas, and I also serve as a fractional business development executive for a couple companies. One is Infinity Capital Partners, a middle market investment bank out of OKC, and then also my family's company, my dad and brother's company, Citywide Facility Solutions. They do outsourced commercial maintenance, commercial cleaning. I mean, you do it, we fix it, basically. So, the funnest thing or the best thing going on in my life, this week it rained a little bit, and my kids wanted to go outside in the rain, and I was like, okay, we're gonna go, but we need to have our umbrellas. And so they go get their umbrellas, and man, they had a trip on that thing. I mean, I've never seen kids have so much fun in the rain, and it's just the joy of just those small things that make kids happy. But today we're joined by an awesome Wichita guy, Caleb Edelman. He is the president of Electron. Yep. And has a lot of other hats that he wears as well. Comes from an accounting background, but Caleb is one of those guys that very intuitive with his questions. We'll probably get into those a little bit later. We joked a little bit earlier about a question that he posed at one of our M&A events that we had, and he brings a lot of truth. Doesn't mince words, but I'm excited to have Caleb on board with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Do I get to do the best thing in my life?
Yes. What is
only
that?
If you want to. You're not required to, but there will be an awkward pause and some Jeopardy music inserted into the episode if you don't.
So the best thing in my life right now is I'm going to be a bridesmaid for the first time ever. So I'm really excited for that.
That's cool, man.
Work? Yeah. I don't fully know.
Are you wearing a dress?
No, okay. Absolutely not. But my sister is getting...
We wouldn't judge you if you did.
Well, my sister is getting married, and the bridal party is only siblings.
So that's cool, man. Yeah, that's cool.
Right?
Congrats to your sister.
That's very cool.
Awesome. So I don't know if I'm more excited to be the bridesmaid or to go to my first ever bachelorette party. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that relationship that you're able to do that.
If we were recording this episode in October instead of now, we would have. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, cool, man. That's great. Well, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you got into the business that you're in right now, and just what that process was like for you.
I feel like the story doesn't make sense without a little bit of context and background. Mm-hmm. So if you can spare me just a little bit here, I'll give you that.
Sure.
My dad is a bricklayer. His dad was a bricklayer. My mom's a teacher. Her dad was a plumber, right? Mm-hmm. And so I grew up with working with your hands, service work. No one in my dad was a college dropout, and his dad was a high school dropout. So college was not necessarily on the list. It was one of those things of I would be complaining, mixing cement in 100-degree weather. Mm-hmm. And Dad would be like, well, if you don't want to do this, I suggest you go to school. And he's like, and also you can figure that out for yourself because, you make money. So you're, if you want to. And so it was one of those things where it was kind of scary because like my mom had gone to school. But I remember being 16 and kind of, I was working with Dad and playing club summer basketball. And, I remember getting the bill to play in the fall and talking to Dad about it. And he's like, man, that's about the cost of community college. And I was like, well, can I go? And he was like, I mean, sure, I don't care what you do. And so I started JUCO at 16, did really well there, got transfer scholarships, WSU. So shout out Shockers. And then at 20 on a Saturday, I got married. And on Sunday, I graduated with my undergrad. And I was like, all right, I know everything there is to know about life. Like, I've got it figured out.
That's how it works.
Typical 20-year-old.
And so I went to work at Coke Industries, and shout out Coke. They paid for my MBA through Emporia State, another local school. And I worked there for 5 years, and a lot of good experience, working at Coke and at their subsidiary in Vista, and actually getting some exposure to some M&A. In terms of, I was a part of the Lycra carve-out when they sold off the Lycra business, and then at the corporate level, being able to see how the Coke philosophy is on looking at businesses and how they manage businesses and things like that. So I tell people that was kind of like a basic training, like 5 years of that. So, but it was one of those things to where long term, it wasn't a fit anymore, and so I actually went into aerospace and was very successful in 5 years, kind of moving up through. Who'd have thought, like max grounding and COVID, like let's go into aerospace. This is a great idea. But I tell people like I kind of woke up like 3 years ago, and I was working as a vice president of finance and IT. For my division was 80 million sales, 40 million EBITDA. So I was compensated well. I basically had kind of, access and resources to whatever I wanted to do. But what I didn't have was the why, and the why I'm doing this, and then the ability to kind of impact that decision, right? A lot of projects that I worked on, I feel like, sadly, like I was destroying value. In my perception of value, right? I know that's everybody's got their own perception, right? And so I kind of diligently started looking and like what can I do that is like mine. And it was crazy because growing up with being son of a small business owner, I never wanted to put my family through that, to where it was all on my shoulders. And it because when you're in a small business, it's work, life, family, it all becomes one.
Yeah.
Right.
We talk about, work-life balance, stuff like that. But in a small business, it just merges, and it kind of becomes part of your identity and all of that, right? And so I just remember, and this is why I tell people I love LinkedIn. I remember on LinkedIn, like applying for a CFO role, posted by like a board of directors, and I was like, this is weird. And I applied at like 11, and he responded back at 11:30, and by like midnight I had an interview scheduled for the next day, and I was like, all right, this is different. Like this is something is, And so I meet these two guys. I meet these two guys from Chicago, and they're telling me, hey, we just bought this business. We worked in corporations forever. We want to do our own thing, but we want to do it with partners. We're engineers. We'd love to have someone with a finance background, and our vision is to basically just kind of not mess things up. Like, we're looking for safe, steady, generations long family businesses that don't really have an alternative to private equity. Let's say the family doesn't want to continue it, and there's a lot of like strategic buyers who will buy a business, simply for access to that customer book or to be in a space. Or a vertical. It's not necessarily because they want that business to be successful per se, right? And so they pitched me this vision, and I just fell in love. And I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. Like, I want to join a group to where I can put a real mark, a real stamp on a company, and people throw around like the legacy word, but in terms of being able to reinvest in a facility, in a company, slowly, surely, continuous, daily progress. What I tell people about like our approach is that we can afford to be patient where others can't. A lot of private equity, it's like, oh, we have to close this many deals this quarter.
Right.
I will tell you, it was very scary because May of 22 we bought Electron, August of 22 we bought Phoenix Electric. And I formally joined in August. And then in 23, we didn't buy anything. And I'm sitting around the table and I'm like, what did I just get myself into?
What are we doing, guys?
Yeah. But then last year we bought 4 businesses. We added all kinds of partners. And so now, to kind of look back and say 3 years into this journey and say, to be a part owner in 6 different companies, Cleveland, Chicago, Memphis, Wichita, be able to reinvest in the facilities and the companies and the employees. Like, it's something to where I know that, if I get hit by a truck tomorrow, I'm content with what I'm doing, and I feel good about what I'm doing in terms of providing value to society. So.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
dude.
sorry, really long answer.
No, I mean,
that's great.
It's great context. I mean, I was born and raised in a family business too, and yours was mixing concrete. Mine was on top of roofs, or it was cleaning mud pits for car washes. And that was the comment of my grandpa always said. He's like, there's no child labor laws in family businesses, and it was like, and both my parents didn't go to college either, and it was like one of those things of like, well, if you want to do something different, go to college. But now. We're all my brothers are entrepreneurs now. So it's like we kind of just followed that. But, and something that like you mentioned, and I wrote this down, was you afford to be patient, and I think that's what we were talking prior to the interview was how, private equity, everybody, it's that idea of like quick, no, get it done. In 5 years, we got to flip. But it sounds like with North Park is, their philosophy is a lot different from what a traditional private equity is. And so like talk us through like, and say a little bit who North Park is, who your partners are, but then also like their philosophy on how they approach business.
Yeah. So Ryan Sullivan, Greg Topol, they're the founders. It's their brainchild. Ryan lived on North Park, hence North Park Group. We're very creative.
You could
all
be
private equity and family offices are.
You could be lawyers with that level of genius on the labeling.
Exactly right. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the best. We have other partners, but they're kind of the like heart and soul and the vision, and we kind of work off of the structure that they put together. It's really interesting actually how obviously we learned a lot from deals 1 to deal 6, right? But if you look at the philosophy and like the structure and the approach, 5, 6, 4, like it's not that different from how we thought about 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right. So we kind of have a model and approach. And it's not necessarily a secret sauce, but I think maybe the best answer is, so absolutely we look to buy and we look to hold. So we're not looking to flip. Out there in private equity, there's kind of I've consulted to where I've seen strategies of we're going to do interest-only loans, and we're just going to buy 4 $1 million EBITDA businesses, and you package them together, and all of a sudden your multiple is going to spike because now it's a $4 million business, and as long as you can survive the hold period and keep those interest-only loans, you'll make bank, and good luck to whatever happens to any fallout in between, because it's just chasing that number, right? I've also seen that, there's other I don't want to say that like all private equity is that way, because there's other groups that we align with more in terms of, like I think you mentioned permanent equity earlier, in terms of like the strategy of we're looking to buy and hold, and honestly we're looking to recruit more operators and partners into our business model, because what we look at is the profile of the seller, and we know manufacturing, so we stay to manufacturing. We stay what we know. Now if someone comes to us that is an expert in a field and they want to explore something in their field, then we'll absolutely back that up. But our group knows manufacturing, so that's what we stay with. But if you look at the product portfolio of our group, we have electrical components, we have brush holders for electric motors, we have security seals, we have bar supplies, we have roof flashings, and we have glass greenhouses. So show me the commonality in that product offering, right? And the only commonality there was the profile of the seller. It was a family-run business, decades long, generation on, and they cared about their people, and they wanted to find someone that they felt would not just be a good owner, but a good owner-operator, someone that they could entrust their people with. So something that we like to do differently is a lot of times when we acquire a company, we'll offer a retention bonus to those employees. So we'll incentivize them. Hey, stay with us for 2 years. Give us a real shot, and we'll give you a bonus to stay with us.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like what we're looking for, we're looking for manufacturing companies. We're looking for generations long. We really don't look at distressed deals. Cash positive during COVID is an excellent indicator in terms of a healthy business. And we also we have found success in the $500,000 to $3 million EBITDA range. That's not to say that we wouldn't go above or below that, but that's where we have found success. So
yeah. No, that's great. That long-term hold philosophy, is it like a personally driven thing that, hey, this just aligns with my values, or is it a financially driven thing? What is it that kind of helps elevate that towards the top of the scorecard from a business perspective?
It's both. It's both. So, in talking to Ryan and Greg, and when I met with them, they said, we're trying to buy 5 or 6 companies, right? And a lot of it started from, Ryan wanted to invest some of his own money, and he wanted to invest it in something he could, have his mark on, and didn't want to put all his eggs in one basket. So, I'll buy 5 or 6 companies instead of one company, right? And, I'm over here like, let's go to 20 guys. so which we're trying to do one or two more a year. But it was one of those, just in terms of like thought process. It was, and this is gonna sound arrogant, but I'm incredibly blessed and very aware of how fortunate I am. But the thing that is true of any North Park partner is that we could make more money doing something else. So none of us did this with, the bottom line being priority number one. And so when that's not your priority number one, what is your priority number one, right? And so for us, it was the way in which we did it. And being able to, make good money, we call it mailbox money, be able to kind of sit back and just have, that's why people like rentals so much. You just mailbox money, right? Check shows up in the mail every month.
I assume that's the name of the holding company.
Well, yes, exactly, right?
Mailbox Money International. Yeah.
But that was kind of the thought process in terms of financially, in terms of we want a system that creates money for us. Steady money, constant, we didn't want a big payout 5 years from now. We wanted a continuous income stream. And then we wanted something to where, again, Ryan will tell you that he wants, if he has it his way, he won't sell anything until, when I'm dead, then you guys can figure it out. So it's one of those things to where you get a lot of fulfillment in terms of seeing the transformation of a company, of a facility, of employees. I do personally, in seeing like employee development. So it is one of those things to where it's very interesting when you take the, the end all be all is this number, this paycheck, and you move that down the priority list. And once you do that, it really opens up to, okay, well, what are we doing every day?
Yeah.
I want to be in a job where I can come, do a podcast in the morning. So
We're glad you're in a job that can do that.
yeah.
Well, and I think it's like it is that heart for employees, and I mean, and that starts from the thesis of when North Park was created. I mean, it was around investing and buying family-owned businesses, to where when it comes to family-owned businesses, for the most part, majority of them, I mean, it's all about the people in the organization. And, I think it's when people who work for an organization that is being sold or is currently owned by private equity, there's this fear of like, I may be losing my job. But I mean, you guys flip on its head and you give retention bonuses. You're like, give us a shot. We're here for you. We're here to transform this business, because there's many family-owned businesses out here that could be wildly successful if you have new ideas, new innovation. And I think that's where you guys come into play, is like, we can, and you get the value from seeing that transformation happen over time, because it may take more than 5 years for the transformation to happen.
Exactly. And these legacy businesses are such a safe place for innovation and entrepreneurship. I mean, it is phenomenal, just even what I've seen in 3 years in terms of just design ideas. And it's like, yeah, we can actually pursue that. We never had a budget for that before, but yeah, let's go pursue that new model or new design.
Have you, in the few years you've been with them, and even with like Electron and the other companies you've been involved with, I mean, are you seeing some more innovation come from that current employee base? Like seeing them like kind of have this like, oh, like this is exciting. Like we can do more, we can take this to the next level.
Yeah. And I mean, everybody, you're always going to have both sides of the coin, but, so, I don't want to tell you it's all unicorns and rainbows over here, but
it's not.
But sorry, but what I will say is that if you are, truly committed to like your success and wanting to help yourself and help the company and stuff in terms of that, like we are willing to invest in people. So we've had operators go 4 levels up to where they're like running an entire shift by themselves on a weekend now, right?
Yeah.
And we've also had senior managers who have been operating a certain way for 20 years, and we're not going to disrupt that, but it's very quickly that the team almost kind of applies that internal pressure, because again, the philosophy is like, just don't mess it up. Like if this business has been successful for 70 years, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to make sure that we keep the lights on to a certain degree, and being able to give them some capital equipment, invest in them just a little bit, it generates some wild wins in terms of earnings and things like that, because it's a facility that hasn't had, new equipment in 10 or 20 years. But with the people, it's very funny, because what I will say is in my culture, specifically at Electron, the operators that I've talked with and supervisors and leads, they're like, yeah, I have way more potential and way more opportunity than I've ever had before. And I've told them, like, hey, listen, if you want to go live in Cleveland or Memphis or Chicago, let me know and I will help make that happen for you. So because we're in a partnership too, like it also offers them the ability to learn about stuff that they've never known before, or, potentially have a career path that they didn't never would have had before. Yeah. And I've created a shared team here in Wichita. So and it's like opt in or opt out, but the AP, AR, HR for like the other facilities is right here in Wichita. So there's 3 or 4 jobs in Wichita that didn't exist before. Yeah. So and they're all like, this is a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
well, and kind of talk through when you go through the acquisition process. I mean, you're buying legacy companies, so there is an existing culture, existing way of doing things. What's that? What does that transition look like when you're coming into those type of organizations when the acquisition happens?
We really like to get the sellers on a consulting agreement for 6 months, if possible. Longer. If our Memphis one, I think she stuck around for a year, and we threw a retirement party and cake and stuff, and she still came in the next day just to check on everything. And we were like, man, you're the best. So
you got a good one there.
Yeah. And every relationship is different, but we just got a letter of recommendation from our most recent acquisition in Cleveland, and we tell the seller, wait to write that. Don't write it day one on the closing. Wait until we're a few months into the transition. And you can get feedback from your employees, and you can see how everything's going, and you see how we handled the process. I mean, the thing that drives me crazy, sorry, it's just a personal thing, is private equity groups will go and brag in their slides about, from LOI to close, we cut 20 to 30% of the offer out of the deal in diligence. So in other words, we gave you a $10 million offer, and we are telling you publicly that is a $7 or an $8 million offer. And they put it out there like gold star, look at us, look at all the money we saved. And I'm like, are the sellers not looking at this and being like, wait a second, I need to discount that letter by 2 or 3 million, because when we do probably way too much diligence on the front end, but we're of the we're of the mind that if we give you an LOI, that's it. That's our offer. Like we're not going to retrade.
God bless you. I'm serious. Like a lot of the folks listening to this podcast are first time buyers or first time sellers. And where I feel like people that are just churning through deals like the traditional private equity model, I'm going to use this word. It applies to some, not to all, but where they exploit the process is that they have this massive infrastructure and informational advantage over their deal counterparts. And so they'll put something out there without the integrity of saying, this is something I intend to honor. Like they'll have in there the diligence outs and all that other stuff, but they know from experience and from their process, this is not going to survive. And that's why they present it that way. And that's why I like, whether I'm representing a seller or representing a buyer, is this idea of, we've talked about it on this podcast a little bit before, this idea of a good LOI is something where people actually have a realistic shot at honoring that specific deal. They mean it. They know that they mean it. They've had enough process. They've had enough input from folks to know that that is likely to succeed. And that requires enough information up front from diligence. It requires enough engagement from people. It requires that they receive enough representation. Because if you haven't been through the deal process before, you don't even know the questions to ask. You might be negotiating price is this? No. If you're talking asset versus stock treatment, you're talking completely different walk away money or even F reorg. There's all different kinds of variables in there. And so I love hearing that you engage in a lot of diligence up front. And for folks that are listening that are looking at being a seller, if your buyer doesn't know anything about your company, don't trust the offer. Whether they're PE and experienced and sophisticated or not, if they don't know stuff or they're not talking to people that have a lot of experience in the space, you can't have confidence in that. And so now you're going to disrupt your organization, and you're going to spend a lot of money, and you're going to commit to a process that might lock you up for a while. You gotta pay attention to the process and ask the hard questions up front. #end rant.
But shameless plug. That's why there's folks like Infinity Capital Partners out there from an investment banking standpoint, because we represent the seller, and most time it is their first time going through a process, and they have a professional business buyer on the other end who wants their business, and they don't know the difference between net working capital, asset versus stock. They see a number that's thrown them in the LOI and oh my gosh, that's more money I've ever seen in my life, but they don't know what strings are attached to it, what's behind it, and everything. And that's where I think is as a first time seller, it's get counsel. Whether it be from, get the legal side, make sure you're represented by, a great legal partner, #Foreman Law. Thank you. But then also, it's accounting, and we've talked this many times, I think, is who is the team behind you during a deal? It's making sure you get that team lined up. If you know that you're going to want to sell, within the next 12 to 18 months, it's being prepared for that, getting the things behind you. Because if you have private equity knocking on your door, there's other ones out there that more than likely would like to purchase your business. So you have something of value there. And again, if it's a legacy business, it's been your life's work, your family's work to build a very successful company. And you want to make sure that the people who are buying your company value that. And and whatever you want out of that transaction process, whether it be the dollars or if you really care that your employees are well taken care of, those sort of things, you need to have a good partner to help you walk through that process.
Right.
I love when I'm talking to a seller and they're like, well, hold on, let me run this by my accountant and my attorney. And I'm like, great, perfect. Yeah. All right, there's a level of education here.
Some professionalism there. Yeah. I mean, and then for your end, that, hey, there's going to be great conversation. We're going to go through this process, and and it's better for you because you're getting a well-ran company that way for the most part when you're doing that.
Well, and just in terms of I think the people do not appreciate the time. Like if you have not done it before and being involved in buying and selling the process,
100%.
I mean, it can very quickly become a full-time job plus.
Oh yeah. It is like working
yeah.
a second job the entire deal process. And if you're not ready for it, like your business is going to suffer. And the deal process can take anywhere from, from beginning to end, from 3 months to a year or even longer. And if you're completely diverted your attention as a seller to the process, like who's taking care of the business?
Yeah.
Because that is going to show up in the numbers. And I mean, if you're a buyer and you start to see, hey, that pipeline's looking a little dry there, or hey, these numbers are starting to dip and I don't have a good meta cycle type of explanation for it. I mean, that can tank your deal.
Yeah. Jake and Sam here.
Thank you for joining us. If you find this content helpful, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, and especially leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or iTunes. Really helps us out a lot.
Yeah, 1 star, it's on Sam.
Yeah, it's definitely on me.
For a team as small as ours to have closed 4 companies last year, if you do not have that buttoned up type process, like I said, we don't have the time to retrade on a deal. It's like, this is our LOI. Let's close in 90 days.
Yeah.
Or, are we all good? Yes or no? So it's like I said, we do a ton of work up front, but Ryan says all the time, you have to kiss 100 frogs, maybe find one Prince Charming, like maybe. So you have to become very good at like filtering and just going through that process and just being honest and transparent. Like don't
Right.
like, I was talking to a guy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania about a phenomenal business. And I said, to be clear, I love what you're telling me. What are your expectations just based on everything you're saying? Well, I'd really like to see X, Y, Z. I said, okay, what is your last 3 years average EBITDA? So, oh, well, we didn't make money last year. It was tough. And we had, $500,000 this year, but this year was pretty good. And I was like, okay, you do realize that you just told me you want a 20x multiple. and he was like, well, yeah, potential and this and that.
Yeah,
and I was like, I completely agree, dude. My model is I pay for results.
Right.
We're very conservative. Right. We're very, we have a model, we have a system. I'm telling you that I'm not a good fit. I love you. I love this company, and I call me if your valuation changes. But I'm going to tell you right now. And it was just one of those things. Like 20 minutes into the phone call, I was like, wait a second.
Right.
Right.
Well, because the traditional PE model, I mean, they got to show that they can improve an organization, whether it be financial engineering, cutting costs, those sort of things. Where you're on the flip side of like, we want a company that performs decently well, and we'll make sure we maintain that performance over the long term, and hopefully add a little bit on the top of it. But it's like that's where it's just there. It depends that there's different buyers for different businesses.
Well, yeah, and that's where you get into trouble when you start to model all kinds of growth. That's been the biggest thing. Is I think our investor list has grown from 20 or 30 when we started to now it's like 100 plus with the wait list. And I mean, part of it is we've been. We do an 8% preferred, but our cash on cash is probably closer to 20%, which has been like for us. We're very happy like with what we're doing and being able to do returns like that. And it's cash during the hold period. So what we're seeing a lot of time is distributions that we've returned to investors from deals 1, 2, 3. They're just given right back for deals 4, 5, 6. So it's just basically like, hey, you've proven to me that I can trust you with my money. So just keep it like one guy was. Kind of funny is we send out the deck for the last deal, and it's like 2 minutes later sends an email like, "Yep, I'm in," and I'm like, "You didn't read the deck, man? Can you please
work in there? Like, respect my work."
It's almost like you got to put like a misspelling in there or something, like a misrepresentation to see if they catch it. Like, oh yeah.
You will give me all
it's like I
your money and firstborn naming rights.
It's like I appreciate the faith, but like man, I put a lot of time into that.
Man, that's a really good credit to you of people having seen results over time and then being wanting to continue to trust you. I have a question for you on a couple of things that you said earlier that I think are really valuable for people to key in on. I think the first one is that you talked about, hey, this transition that you personally went through of starting to identify that, hey, I'm personally kind of misaligned with how the business I'm in is creating value, and it's creating some kind of internal conflict, and I need to go figure out how to be in a place that aligns with my values and my priorities. And you also talked about later on about how, the people that are involved in North Park are folks that could be making more money somewhere else, but they've identified that there are things that are more important. And what I really like about that, and I want to talk about just a little bit more, is this idea that we each have a different sort of scorecard. Everybody thinks about value creation differently. It's why PE does it their way. It's why you do it your way. It's why a family business does it another way, and so on and so forth. And so, taking the time and having, that sort of radical self-candor to just say, hey, this is what matters to me. And I'm willing to put myself in a position to maximize value based on this, and then applying that at a business level. And what I'm curious if you could talk about a little bit more is, do you feel like the other people on your team have sort of gone through that same sort of process of, self-identity work of saying like, hey, I know what matters to me, and this is what it is. And it's not dollar first, it's values first, dollars will come. And, how has that impacted the broader culture and sort of the long-term trajectory of the business? So can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting how, each partner is kind of, yes, we are all aligned on the values, but it's so interesting, like the origin story of like why, know, and so, like Ryan, the founder, he'll tell you at the end of the day, like a business is in business to make money. So what is the one result that matters? Cash, earnings, right? So he's very, engineer, blunt, direct of like, I am doing this because, I was sick of working for someone else and I wanted my own diversity. So that's why I started this, and right. He's very transparent in terms of like, I'm in this to make money. And he's like, I believe that there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I want to do it my way, which is the right way, and then, Greg has his own experiences in terms of, he has, literally like invented products from scratch and just never kind of been able to, I feel like truly appreciate the impact on the back end of all that. And so, when I talk to Greg a lot, it's a lot about like really seeing that like tangible, like those products in people's lives. And I'm sure after this, they're going to call me and be like, no, that's not how I feel at all. Where did you get from that? But Brian has a young child and was like, I want to be in a business where I can be close with my family and more time and I know this business well, and so like his story was his value was his family, and how can I best align my work life with that, and with me it was like I need to find something that I can do for the next 30 years that is sustainable for my family, because in a lot of my past career and work, I'll tell people I was bad dad, bad husband first 10 years of my career because I was never home. And I needed to find something to where, yes, if I'm going to travel, at least I have control of that schedule, right? So, I'm not just going somewhere to be there for a quarterly or to do an annual audit or inspection or whatever. It's I'm going because I believe in what I'm doing and it's going to provide real value and have real meaning. So if I'm going to miss a kid's basketball game, then it's really important to me, right? Yeah. And a lot of times I can control my schedule enough to where it's like, okay, I travel Thursday through Tuesday, so I don't miss those games or something like that, right? And so it's so interesting just in terms of that scorecard, because what I would say about North Park is that of all the partners, I don't think anybody's scorecard is the same. But the point the point is that the principle of the alignment or the common metric is that money was not our number one for any of us.
Yeah. I like that. And I mean, we've talked here before about co-ownership relationships. And when that gets out of alignment, I mean, there can be a lot of damage to a business. And so, just having those values aligned is huge.
It is. And when SBA is involved and, your mortgage, your house is backing it, it is a partnership. You feel the realness of the partnership.
Yeah.
So.
The thing that I also wanted to talk about that interplays with that is you talked about this idea that you can afford to be patient, and how much power that brings to your process, to value creation, in all of that. And I think that has a really powerful interplay with that clarity that you talked about of, hey, we know what matters, right? And it's not dollar first. And I think that's where private equity gets in trouble from, some of the destructive results that we see in terms of a traditional model, is that it's only about the dollars. And when it's only about the dollars and you've got this, 3 to 5 to 7 year, hold period, and you're just trying to scrape every last dollar out that you can, and you're leveraged to the hilt, you don't have that ability to be patient with things. And so your value framework, your cultural alignment, coupled with, you've got these very stable assets, right, that allow you that margin to really be patient and align with your value. And I think where a lot of business owners can get into trouble is that they want those things that you're talking about, but they haven't designed their business, or they haven't designed their life in a way that actually creates margin.
Yep.
And when you extract all the margin out, which is what I feel like in many cases the traditional private equity model does, then you lose the ability to be picky on your scorecard, because you are beholden to the financial realities of, we must produce X in order to survive, right? Or there's another point, and then survival is always going to come to the top of the scorecard.
Yep.
And so if you're a seller, and you're looking at like, hey, who am I going to sell my business to? Like, the amount of margin they're going to bring to the table should matter a lot to you, because if their approach is like, hey, there's no margin here, that means, because we've got to churn this through and we've got to scrape everything out, that means that's going to influence how they're going to react when things get tight, because they're not going to have as much buffer. That's going to that's going to impact how they're going to treat your employees. That's going to impact how they're going to treat your customers and all this other stuff. And so, I think that matters a huge amount to folks that care about a lot of the things that rise to the top of our scorecard when we have that clarity about, like, hey, this is what really matters in life, and it's not just money. And so I think it's really important for our listeners to kind of see in this story is that's something that you guys have been really, really good at, is that those stable assets create a foundation that supports margin, that allows you to continue to consistently align and act on, here's our values, because when you put yourself in a position where there's no margin, you can't do that anymore, because survival is going to crowd it out. You
have to have the margin for the best example I can give you is that I spent 10 years working for corporations, right? And so, and in accounting and finance, right? And so bad habits have developed. Yes. Surprise, Caleb has some bad habits.
Surely you do.
I have literally been cussed out by Ryan for chasing a month, for chasing a number. Why did you do that? Well, because my month needed to be X. Says who? Says you? Yeah. I guess, and it's one of those things. He's like, you made a bad decision for your company for the next quarter, next year, next 5 years. Like, you chose to pick a one-time win over fixing a process. You chose to get that shipment out the door and irritate the customer or something, versus doing whatever the right decision was for that meaningful relationship with that customer, right? And I have never ever in my career, in my life, been chastised for shipping too much in a month. And it wasn't that I shipped too much. It was that, like, okay, why were you so concerned with the 31st? What's it matter? It's another day, it's another month, another quarter, another year, and it's from that perspective of, it's like, man, he's just, the patience is insane.
Right. Well, when you think about it, it's like, it's all about the finish line. Yeah. Right. And when you're fixated on long-term value, that the interim milestones, they matter, but like, that's not the finish line. Like, it all becomes about, like, hey, my finish line is 30 years out there in the future, or it's 20 years, or it's whatever it is. And so then you make good long-term decisions, as opposed to, man, if I can't show my numbers, we're not going to get to where we need to be for an exit in the next 2 years, based on our hold period. And that's going to create that counterproductive, undermining long-term value creation.
And one of my biggest learnings has been those milestones. It's not the actual milestone that matters, it's how you did it. It's how you got that milestone, right? And
explain that for folks.
Well, just like, so, I mean,
pretend
I think,
that I'm a lawyer who sucks at it. Yeah.
No, I think you nailed it in terms of it's the finish line, right? Okay, so if we want, say Electron to grow 10% every year for the next 40 years, what is that finish line? Reverse engineer, how do you get there, right?
Right.
What does not matter is the fact that Electron gets 10% better the next 3 years. What matters is how it gets better. Because if those are 3 one-time projects that can never be repeated, or if that was from like an earnings-only perspective and we had to cut people and not reinvest in equipment, or that was because we beat up our suppliers and they're going to fire us, or a customer's going to fire us, it doesn't matter, because year 4 you're going to go backwards.
Yeah.
And so what matters is that 10% milestone in a sustainable way for you, for your suppliers, for your customers, for everybody.
You're talking like the compound effect. I mean, it's like those small things that over time they'll do that, and instead of it just a one-time fix. Because say like supplier situation, well, we raked our supplier over the coals on that one. Well, yeah, your supplier just fired you, and so now you got to go find somebody else.
Right.
It's like,
and
so you just created another problem.
Process.
Exactly. You may have just solved a problem right now, but you created a million problems down the road.
Right. We've talked a little bit about this idea of net value creation, and that all value has these multiple components, but it's value created minus value consumed equals your net value. And I'll talk to you about that more. I might write a book someday.
No, I like it.
But when you think about it and you look at like that decision, because all value is the result of decisions and it's defined by what your priorities are, is that you've got people are looking at value created, but they're only looking at a subset of value creation. They're looking at, hey, how did this create value right now? And then they're only looking at a subset of value consumption, which is they're only looking at like, how did it create a cost right now? They're not going like, okay, what is the overall value creation? Like to your example, I created value by having this one-time event, right? That's not going to create any more. Well, instead of creating that sort of long-term, plant the tree kind of value proposition, I've got a one-time, one-off deal, and that's very limited, and it's not going to repeat itself. Plus, now, and like to use Jacob's example, if I rake the supplier over the coals, like you might have lowered your right now costs, but your long-term costs just went over, and you might have created a net value loss instead of a net value creation when you're honest about here's all the creative components and here's all of the consumptive components to that. And you have to add on, like in that sort of instance, like now I've got a cost that not only can I not repeat it, so I missed out on an opportunity cost, but also I've got to go and replace this relationship, and I've got to do all these other things. And so that cost just kind of grows and grows and grows, and your way of thinking about that as an individual and as an organization changes when your mindset is fixated on that 2-year time horizon that's right in front of you, or that quarterly time horizon that's like right under your nose, as opposed to no. Look out there at the real horizon.
Yep.
Like that's where we're going. We've got clarity. We know what it looks like. Let's get there, and then let's just do it in a high integrity, high excellence kind of way.
Absolutely.
In the process.
That's what you again afford to be patient. It's one of those, and I think maybe part of that is like it just does not exist in a lot of places in the world, except for some of the biggest, largest private companies. But like, think about every publicly traded company. Who in that company can afford to be patient?
Right.
Like, think of all the small business owners out there every day who have to put food on the table for their families. They cannot afford to be patient. It may not be a literal like I want to, like, it may be I want to do this the right way. But if it's you or me, like, sorry, you lose because my family needs to eat, which, I was exposed to some in like the construction space growing up, and to where it's like, this is probably not the right thing to do, but it's do or die.
Well, and that kind of goes back to like how you build it matters. Like there is going to be seasons and there's going to be times where it's like, hey, I've got to do what I got to do to satisfy that survival element on the scorecard. But if you're not taking the time to simultaneously keep an eyeball on the horizon and build the thing that's going to create the margin that's going to allow you to get away from that survival instinct, then you're never going to be able to get to that place where you can really invest in long-term value creation, because it's always survival is so much survival is frequently reactionary based. Like, here's a crisis, here's an emergency, I must do this, and that just deprives you of the value of long-term, decision making.
Yep. Well, and I think it's you just hit the nail on the head. There was the decision making. So, like, as small business owners, we're faced with critical decisions daily, but we don't take the time to understand what are the long-term either benefits or ramifications of the decision that we're making today.
Right.
Because it can be considered small, but what it could be is that compound effect. It could be a net positive down the road for what you're doing, but it could be a net negative. But you have to think about all of that when you're making that decision. I mean, and that's where it's like, we're making, people just individually are making hundreds of decisions a day. And it's like, and sometimes we make them so fast that we don't take the time to really realize what is the long-term value creation or negative value creation that we're creating from this decision.
And that mindset matters, because like if you're constantly just like looking at it in a vacuum, it's like, I'm hungry. That donut looks good, right? I've had a few too many donuts, friends. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and then you're not thinking about it from that longer term perspective.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Caleb, we're so grateful that you've joined us here today. As we wrap up the episode, we'd love to kind of get a couple of takeaways from you for our listeners. As you think about like one great tip for buyers that are looking to have a great deal process or create great value through their deals, what's one thing that comes to mind? But only one. If you go beyond, there's a lever we're going to pull, and you'll be like jettisoned out into certainly you're more than welcome to have more than one if you like.
Well, if there's only one, then I would say probably the most important thing they could do is Google North Park Group and reach out to us and and just become an operating partner with North Park Group. So, no, it's a shameless plug. You guys did it, so I'm going to.
Please do.
But I tell, it's interesting because I had a conversation over lunch this week with a young lady who's kind of talking about, what she wants to do long term. And like, she's like, I don't know if I want to buy something, if I want to start something. Like, I don't know if it's ETA. I don't know. Like, what's your advice? And it was like the one thing that I felt like that I could tell her was, it was actually kind of back to that scorecard discussion that we had earlier in terms of this is not as tactical, but it's like, what is your value? Like, what is your priority? Because if I cannot tell you how many people that I've met that are now trying to sell that, they had this like dream and vision of like, I want to do my own thing. I want to be my own boss. It's going to be so fun. I get to make all the decisions. I get to make my own hours, all these things. And they take an aggressive like 90-10 loan, and then they get in, and then they have one bad month, and all of a sudden the sky is falling, and they're on a drowning in the ocean, like needing a raft. And it's like, why did you do that? Well, okay, your scorecard was that you wanted to be your boss to do, to run your life. But there are other ways to do that that do not involve you taking out a 90% debt loan and running a business that you have no experience with, right? So if, not to discourage ETA, but if your number one scorecard is, I want to be my own boss, let's experiment with that first. Let's open a coffee shop or something. Let's adjust our risk meter, because I tell people like SBA will give anybody a $5 million loan. So
and talk to people that have wisdom and experience. Like getting wise counsel.
Yeah, exactly.
From people that have walked that road that can tell you like, hey, like that might be good. You might be ready for that, but figure out how to do it with like 70-30 or 80-20 or whatever, so you've got more margin to ride through the bumps.
I mean, as a person who went through ETA, when we talk ETA, it's entrepreneurship through acquisition is what we're talking about. I mean, I went through that process with Orange Theory, and you need to plan for more scenarios than you think. Because like when you take out that loan, bank doesn't care if things go sideways or anything like that. And you have to plan for all the scenarios, and you can say, hey, can we withstand this storm? Yep. And, for us in particular, COVID hit shortly after us buying it. And so that was something and then the world we live in today is completely drastically different than pre-COVID in the fitness space. And so, I mean, it's like, being an entrepreneur is rewarding, but it's also, there's a lot of risk involved, and again, it goes back to, it risks your family, it risks your assets, it risks a lot of things.
Right.
And you have to know going in that it's like entrepreneurship is glamorized, but there's also a lot that goes into it that can be trying, and
Right. Yeah. Know what you want.
Yeah.
But make
that
sure that you
scorecard,
get
back to
enough
scorecard.
information
Yep.
and you get enough expertise and experience to help you plug it all
Yep.
together to make a great decision.
Yep.
Right. When I was looking for a home, and I not a physical home, but a career home, and I talked to Greg and Ryan about their model. One of their philosophies was 50-50, half debt, half equity. Right. So I talked to a
very
lot of
stable blend.
I talked to a lot of people that cash only deals, and I was like, man, I get it, I appreciate it. That's really prohibitive to any kind of growth in terms of like the scale that I personally wanted, because that requires a lot of cash, a lot of equity, right?
Yeah.
And then I talked to groups, a lot of 90-10 people, and I was like, that's too much risk. Like I'm not comfortable with that level of risk. And so when I met Greg and Ryan, and their philosophy was kind of this 50-50, half equity, half debt. Like we don't want to overlever our businesses. We want, that whole afford to be patient thing. And that was, I was like, yes, I like this. And so but that was part of like my discovery process of I didn't even know I was a buyer at the time. I just was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
And like being exposed to the M&A space, I was like, I really don't want to do that by myself, but I kind of want to be my own boss, but I kind of want partnerships, but I kind of want like all these things. So But anyways, but no, in all seriousness, I especially am like super committed to my generation, future generations being able to be successful in ETA. And I think there's way more of these family businesses that need a home than there are people that can help run them successfully.
Right.
So I'm like, I have a couple of goals. One of them is I want a North Park product to be in every home in America. That's goal one.
Do it.
And then goal two is I legitimately want to see this kind of blow up. And even if it's not with like our group or our model per se, that it's like with our value stream, and then I can help bring along kind of that next group of buyers. So absolutely, if people are like, man, I really want to buy a business, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I need help, and I want a group around me, I'll gladly sign you up to the team. So we are. It is not a secret. We're not like putting up walls. We're welcoming and trying to recruit like more partners, because it's not necessarily about the money in our pockets. It's kind of like, we would love it if people saw our model and liked it so much that they wanted to be a part of it. Like that's the
cool, man.
Ultimate sign of respect.
Last question for you. What's a great tip that you have for sellers?
Great tip for sellers.
Also called North Park.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, can you see the earlier
Copy paste.
The sellers is a very interesting one, because I've talked to a lot, a lot. It honestly is. To me, and this is probably just bias, of if you are selling your business and someone is giving you an offer, I would be point blank with them of, how many deals have you closed? How many deals have you closed at what you offered? Like, just test those waters, because you're going to get a lot of people who have never closed a deal in their life. They've worked in the M&A space, they've worked in finance or investment banking or something like that. They've not done it themselves, and it's a very low percentage conversion in terms of people who try it and actually successfully close it, because they don't have the funding, they don't realize the diligence, they haven't gone through the SBA process, they don't realize everything that it entails, right?
Yep.
So one, like, do you have a track record, right? Which, if you don't, that's fine, but let's make sure that we're all very clear in terms of like where we're at in the education process and expectations and timeline. And this may take a little bit longer to close if this is your first one. And then two, is your offer your offer?
Yeah.
Like, just as simple as that. So like, we won't retrade and we won't be retraded on. So it's one of those things of where it's like, we're, Yeah, maybe it's a little old school or like handshake style, but it's like, no, this is the offer. Like, we're not going to spend months of diligence trying to rip out, 10K here and 50K here and 100K here. And no, it's a waste of everybody's time, and it's net value negative.
Yeah. Yep, 100%. Those are great thoughts. Caleb, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really grateful for all of your thoughts here. One of the things we're passionate about is we want to have our listeners have great deals, because we know that when great transitions happen, wonderful things happen for communities. They happen for families, they happen for employees, and that's a beautiful thing. And thank you for being part of that process with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the ice cream bar afterwards. So
it's been sitting over there for a minute. Listeners, thanks for joining us. Please check back often. We have lots of great content coming up, and go have a great deal. Thank you for joining us today. For future episodes, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And please check out our website at www.goforemanlaw.com/learning.